Welcome to Wake Up with Ashland. My name is Eric Brooks. I'm the curator here at Ashland and your host for today. I want to take a minute to thank Dupree Mutual Funds for their sponsorship of this series. We've been able to bring you these programs and we very much enjoyed doing so and are very thankful that they have provided that opportunity to us. And we hope you've enjoyed the continuing series of programs and hope you will continue to do so. We plan to continue bringing them to you for the foreseeable future. We've very much enjoyed doing it. It creates some great opportunities to interact with the collection and discuss some special subjects that we don't always get to discuss, so we're always grateful for that opportunity. So thanks for tuning in, and hope you're having a good morning and staying warm. At least if you're around here, it's pretty chilly in Lexington today, but we hope you're staying warm and staying safe, and glad you're able to be with us. Today we're going to talk about a really interesting artifact. One that is relatively new to the collection and that just came back last week after 2 years in conservation. A massive conservation project. And we'll talk about what conservation is and how that works. Good morning, Mike. Thanks for watching. Mike is one of our volunteers. Glad to see you this morning. So we'll talk about those things, and we're also going to talk about the artifact itself, why it's important, what it is, what it means, and its place in our collection. So let's get started. Let's go ahead and turn the old camera around, and we'll move over this direction. There, that's a nice shot of the artifact. Good morning, Mary, another of our volunteers. This is an engraving. It is of Henry Clay delivering his farewell address to the Senate. This image captures an event that took place on March 31st, 1842. It is, as you can see, framed in a massive and truly ornate Rococo frame. This particular piece was given to Henry Clay as a Christmas present for Christmas of 1847. And it's a fascinating space. Good morning, Wood. It's great to have Wood on. And I'm glad to see that he could join us. Wood is actually the donor of this piece. Wood is a descendant who descends from Henry Clay's daughter Anne through her son Eugene Irwin and his wife Josephine, and we very much appreciate your generosity in making this part of our collection and making it available to those who come to visit. We're really pleased to be able to present it and have it returned in its full glory. So it's a remarkable piece, and the fact that it was Henry Clay's and a Christmas present makes it all the more so. But let's move in, take a little closer look at this piece, and you can see it shows the old Senate chamber. All of the senators arrayed therein and the gallery full of people. Henry Clay is right there. He's the taller of the three standing individuals. He usually sat in the back corner near a door so that he could keep an eye on who was coming and going. And you can see him standing right there, delivering his speech to the Senate. So you can see all these individuals, each individually done. Good morning, Gaynell and Deborah Brooks. Thanks for tuning in. And you can see all of the desks, all visible there. Each senator has paperwork and various things on their desks. So the height of detail in this is incredible. This was the vice president's seat. You can see the eagle surmounting the draped roof here. Good morning, Joyce. Really a spectacular representation. You can see the grand chandelier and the half-dome ceiling. This chamber was in use from 1819. After the War of 1812, the Capitol was rebuilt, and this is the chamber that was built to replace the one burned by the British. Good morning, Annette. And it was in use as the old Senate chamber until 1859, when the Senate moved into its current chamber. At that point, in 1860, the Supreme Court moved into this chamber and used it until 1935. In that year, they moved across the street into the building that houses them today, and this space was left empty, and it was used occasionally for entertainment or various gatherings. And in 1976, a renovation was done for the bicentennial to return it to its original state and make it essentially a museum space. And when they did that, they used this engraving to inform their restoration efforts, to make it as much like it was during the heyday of the Great Triumvirate. So you can go to the Capitol today, good morning, Sarah, and see this room if you take the tour. And it is set aside, as I say, as essentially a museum space. So they don't use it today for official activities for the most part. All of the desks that you see here are now in the current Senate chamber. The desks in the room today are reproductions. Senators actually continue to use the original desks, including Henry Clay's. So they are there. You can see the gallery is full of people. Again, and there are women in this gallery. That was allowed. There was actually a gallery identified as the women's gallery, but they were allowed. Hopefully I can get close enough that you can see that woman. Let me pull back a little here, maybe a little easier. That is Dolly Madison. Dolly Madison can be seen there wearing her signature turban right below the chandelier. Some of these other figures may be identifiable if you know who you're looking for. Interesting thing is, this was not done when the event took place. This was done after, and each person was drawn from a daguerreotype. The artist that did this, Mr. Alexander, Edward Anthony, whose name is right there, did this from daguerreotypes. So there was a whole collection of daguerreotypes used to create this work. They were in what he called his National Museum of Daguerreotypes in New York City. Unfortunately, that entity burned, so this is all that survives of that collection of daguerreotypes. So it's an incredible amount of work that took about 4 years to complete. And then in 1847, it was framed in this amazing frame, which you can see is open work. It makes it a little difficult to handle. You can see the scroll work. This is called Rococo. Rococo in vials, these fancy scroll flourishes. It's a French term. And then you can see at the top, it's surmounted by this gorgeous eagle and shield. Now, at one time, at the bottom, come down here, you see the metal ribbons. At the bottom, at one time, around here, there would have been a wreath surrounding a small model plow, which was suspended from the bottom of the frame. Unfortunately, that is now missing, so we don't have that part of it. But we have the rest of it, and you can see it's really pretty amazing. And if we come in here, you see this little image. This is the Capitol building as it looked at the time this engraving was done. So the wings, the extensions of the Capitol weren't there yet. So where the House and Senate are today had not yet been built, and the dome had not been finished. You can see it's entitled the United States Senate Chamber. So it's a beautiful, beautiful piece, just truly amazing as a work of art, as a document of history, and a document of the career of Henry Clay, who again is right there. Now, the speech that he is doing is this speech. This is Henry Clay's farewell address to the United States Senate. He delivered this on March 31st, 1842. This copy is printed on silk, and we believe this was also Henry Clay's. He writes a letter relating to this document that apparently indicates that Lucretia may have been given this piece to a friend named Nathan Sargent. I see that Jesse Johnson has asked about arrowheads. We have a few in the collection that were found by the family, but we don't know where. They may have been here, they may have been elsewhere, but generally no. There may be, but that hasn't turned up here too much. Anyway, it's a beautiful silk printing. You can see the eagle and the title. And a friend and advocate of political and civil liberty and of home industry. March 31st, 1842. And this is a speech that Clay gave thinking that on the day that he gave it, he would retire from the Senate. He had planned to run for president in the 1844 election. His thinking was that he would be elected and that would cap his career. That would be the last great act of a career of nearly half a century. Obviously, it didn't work out that way. Clay was unable to win the election of 1844, and in 1849 returned to the Senate for a final time because he believed his country needed him. Good morning, Sue. Good to see you. And that he needed to be there. This speech is a great speech. It talks a lot about what he thought had been accomplished in his career, etc. And it has one quote in particular that I think is really important, and it's down here towards the bottom. I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not. Right there. I can, with unshaken confidence, appeal to the divine arbiter for the truth of the declaration that I have been influenced by no impure purpose, no personal motive, have sought no personal aggrandizement, but that in all my public acts I have had a sole and single eye and a warm and devoted heart directed and dedicated to what, in my best judgment, I believe to be the true interests of the country. That's a great statement, and it says a lot about what Henry Clay felt about what he did. Good morning, Elaine and William, and the motives of his career. That statement is also inscribed on Henry Clay's sarcophagus. And Sue and I knew that. I mean, we'd been down there a number of times and seen it and spent a long time, so a number of years, looking for it. Thank you, Jesse. We were really glad you enjoy Ashland. We love it, too. And so we've been looking for it. And one day I was looking at this particular framed copy and just happened to read through it, and I saw it. And I said, well, there it is. All this time, it's right there in this speech. So bottom of the line, the moral of this story is if I'm looking for a Henry Clay quote, the place to start is with his speeches. Good morning, Cameron. So this is the speech that is depicted in the engraving. And it's neat that we have both Henry Clay's copy of the speech and his copy of the engraving. So let's talk a little bit about conservation. What does that mean? Conservation is a term used in the museum profession to refer to acts that are designed to arrest the forces of decay on an artifact. When we send something to conservation, our primary goal is to do things to that artifact that will ensure that it does not deteriorate further and that it will survive longer than it otherwise would. Now, usually, the effects of conservation include returning the artifact to a better condition, making it more viewable, making it maybe more aesthetically pleasing, but that's not the primary goal. In this case, we did a number of things. So we took the engraving out of the frame, or I should say our conservators did. When they took it out, it was very dirty. It had a lot of staining on it. If you come up here, you can see this line. There was an acidic border around it, a thing that went under the frame. So that was all taken off. Those things were causing damage to the piece. And we wanted to be sure no further damage had been caused. There was also a small hole right about there. So that was filled and repaired, so as again, not to cause further damage. And there were a few, you sort of see right there, tears that have been repaired. Those things, again, if you don't repair them, will continue to get worse, potentially, and cause more problems. So this piece, the cleaning of this piece is what took the most time, because it has to be done in a series of stages. You can't do too much too fast, or you risk damaging the artifact. This artifact was also deacidified. Paper made from plant material, wood pulp in particular, contains a chemical called lignin. Lignin breaks down into acidic compounds, and those compounds destroy the paper. Have you ever seen an old newspaper that's brittle and yellow? That's because it is very acidic. This piece is probably printed on cotton rag, so that doesn't have much lignin in it. So it probably wasn't acidic to start with. But backing materials and what was the liner around this engraving were acidic, and that put acid into the piece. So we needed to deacidify it so it would, again, continue not to deteriorate. This had also been mounted onto a backing at some point in the distant past. And the result of that is that backing was acting against the rest of the piece. So that had to be dealt with as well. So there was a lot going on here. The frame was all there, but some parts had become somewhat brittle. Obviously, when you got pieces like this, this is can become rather fragile. So these were stabilized and strengthened. The frame was cleaned and polished and waxed. The shield and the eagle were repaired. The head of the eagle was missing, so it was replaced. Now, had there been no shield or eagle at all, we might not have done that. But there was enough of the eagle there that we could reasonably recreate what was missing. So that was something we did because we had a piece of it, and it was just seemed inappropriate to have a piece with parts missing. You'll notice we did not recreate the plow or the wreath. And the reason for that is that we didn't have any of that material. And we didn't want to create new material without having any idea what the old material looked like. Plus, you want to preserve some elements of the history of this piece, like that certain pieces are missing. So it's important that we represent the fact that this is old and it has had a life, and that life is evident in the things that exist. The engraving of the speech was also conserved. This speech is printed on silk, and I imagine it's mounted on another piece of cloth and stretched. But this, at the time it was conserved, some mold had entered the piece, and so it needed to be cleaned, or that mold would continue to damage the silk. It was also pressed tight up against the glass. That doesn't leave a lot of airspace. That's usually not good for the piece. So they inserted a spacer, which you may be able to see right there, and extended the depth of the frame to accommodate that, to create a little airspace in there. And this was also restretched in such a way that it wasn't sagging or creating wrinkles or those kinds of things. So it's very flat now, which is very helpful. With silk, if you get folds, those folds eventually become brittle and they crack. And when silk shatters, it's basically unrepairable. So we've taken actions to ensure that this will be around for a long time. I don't know exactly how many acres of hemp Clay had. He had quite a few. I mean, a lot. He grew a large quantity of it, but I don't know the exact number of acres. So, as you can see, we sometimes have to take actions to ensure the long-term survival of our collection. And often those actions have the added benefit of making the pieces a little more interpretable or attractive. In this case, it's truly a spectacular piece, and it will always and forevermore be a highlight of our collection. So we're really pleased to have these pieces back and to be able to exhibit them for you. And I'd be glad to answer any other questions anyone may have at the present time. If not, if you want to come see these in person, we are booking private tours. You can take the private signature tour and see it, or we have the Traces tour, which is every day at 1 o'clock, and you can book that online too. And the Traces tour does come in this room, so you'll be able to see it on that. And yes, the farewell speech is displayed, and it will remain out for the time being. I don't know how long. I'm not sure that's going to be a permanent thing, but at least for now, I wanted it out to go with the engraving, to highlight the engraving. So yes, it's out right now, and it will remain out for a while. So if you come to see the speech, the engraving, you can also see the speech. Thank you, Katrina. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for tuning in this morning. Next week, I will be back with a special Valentine's episode of Wake Up With Ashland. So that's a good question, Mike. Yes, there are items in the collection. It's something we evaluate on a regular basis, and that evaluation is based on several criteria. The importance of the item. In this case, obviously, it's a Henry Clay piece that he owned that depicts an important event in his life. So this had extremely high importance. I mean, we acquired this knowing we would conserve it. So that was, something we wanted to do from the beginning. So pieces like that belong to Henry Clay, that are really connected to major events, are pieces that are high on the conservation list. The other thing that we look at is condition. If we have a piece that we know is in a condition that if we don't act quickly, it may not survive, that piece is going to be high on our conservation list. So we do have a list. We keep that list. We've actually done pretty well. All in all, a goodly percentage of the paintings in the collection, for example, are conserved. I feel like Ashland has done as well as most places of its sort in terms of conserving the collection. But yes, there are definitely more things. The challenge is, and always is, cost. It's extremely expensive to do this work. And so that becomes a real factor in making decisions about it. But yes, we do definitely have a list. Well, again, thank you very much. I hope everybody's enjoyed it. Everyone have a great